You tear down the house, then you put up the rent. You pocket the cash, and you crush all dissent. You pour all the water out on the floor. You suck at the rich, and you prey on the poor.
Hi, this is The Red Diaper Pail on October 16th, 2025. This is a podcast about art, technology, culture, politics, and parenting from a lefty perspective. I'm Jean-Paul.
And I'm Simone.
And we have moved to Substack. So please check us out on Substack. There's going to be these podcasts for free, and there's also going to be some more long-form think piecey stuff if you want to help support us in our efforts to hire a babysitter.
Yep. And this is episode 5.
Episode 5. We're going to start doing this thing where we talk a little bit about what we're going to talk about. So I'm going to do horrible headlines today. And then what is the artifact for today?
We have a reel that's kind of it's a pop psychologist content creator, but they're talking about radicalization of boys online. So we have a artifact that we get to talk about that relates to parenting.
And it's our first time talking about parenting on our podcast. I'm excited for that. Okay, so let's get started with horrible headlines. First out of the gate is Trump did not win the Nobel Peace Prize, much to the shock of
Trump,
I guess, and some of his supporters.
It went to a much more deserving person,
which is a Venezuelan opposition leader named Maria Corina Machado, who is, I can't interpret this as anything else except for we can't give it to you because we have to retain some level of credibility. So instead we're going to give it to someone who will make your war that you're pushing to have with Venezuela sort of give you some political cover for it by making her seem sympathetic.
Yep.
I don't know.
Yeah, and I think it's all marketing. I think that this is also calculated by the committee because most people who are kind of paying attention to this in Europe and United States probably don't know who she is, and so they just see it as a Latina political woman getting it, and that's good enough.
Yeah, that was there's this celebration on Twitter of oh, haha, a Latino woman got, which is that's who he wanted to get it. If it wasn't for him, it's probably the top of his list of people he wanted to have get it. So
yes, and she has been an American ally or a CIA asset, I guess, in the region for 2 decades.
Absolutely, a CIA asset. Yeah, she's wanted them to do sanctions. She's wanted them to do military interventions. He's gone all over Europe asking right-wing governments in Israel to intervene militarily. They had this interim government for a while, and she was helped construct it. And I don't think people know this, but she also was involved in the 2002 coup against Chavez. And Chavez at the time was a democratically elected leader. So this has nothing to do with popular sovereignty or democracy. This has everything to do with privatizing Venezuela's oil, which she's promised to do if she gets into power. That's what they want. This, I think, has to do with the Trump's not exactly anti-war. What he is anti-war in the Middle East. What they want to do is do this sort of Fortress America thing, and that means, I think, an extended form of manifest destiny where the Western Hemisphere belongs to the United States. And so they're going to be targeting Venezuela as opposed to Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The person who actually got the Nobel Prize called me and said, I'm accepting this in honor of you because you really deserved it. A very nice thing to do. I didn't say then give it to me though. I think she might have. She was very nice, and I've been helping her along the way. They need a lot of help in Venezuela. It's a basic disaster.
Okay, so next headline, wouldn't you know it? This is the New York Times. Trump administration authorizes covert CIA action in Venezuela, and usually they won't admit to this. But
this is a covert action.
But he did. I guess
the story is that the drugs are moving in boats. Then we targeted boats. then the boat stopped, and now the drugs or whatever is moving over land. And the CIA has done a covert
some sort of
operation.
Operations. So Machado gives this like fig leaf of we're doing it for democracy, but this is Trump's quote on asks why would you do that? I authorize for two reasons, really. Number one, they have emptied their prisons into the United States of America.
Okay.
Two, the other thing are drugs. We have a lot of drugs coming in from Venezuela. So this is again like he's able to sort of frame this as just pure U.S. self-interest, nothing to do with principles, democracy.
Yeah.
But you would expect the old sort of imperialists to do that. So,
but
anyway,
not
him. So I guess maybe Machado was a pointless thing to.
I mean, it made sense to the Nobel Committee, but doesn't really make sense to Trump.
Next one is the Salesforce CEO,
Benioff,
a ghoul named Mark Benioff, has called for, or I guess endorsed the idea of sending the National Guard into San Francisco because he's worried about crime.
He's a real loser.
Yeah, I don't know much about him or Salesforce, but
Salesforce used to have a better reputation in like the nonprofit, do good for the world, corporate social responsibility landscape, and it has completely been destroyed in the last like 5 years. They got rid of a lot of their resources for nonprofits, and all their like supposed Salesforce for good stuff has just been completely annihilated under Benioff. And he is like absurdly pro AI. I mean, all these CEOs are, but he's like over the top, can't wait to like push it for everything, can't wait to get rid of jobs to do it. Like he's like a really unmoderated evangelical for it. And I don't know, it's just like bad vibes. But calling for the feds to come into your city as a CEO of a massive corporation is really distasteful.
Yeah, I mean, the crime is at the lowest point in San Francisco that it has been in the city.
Oh yeah, that was his idea. He's like, oh, we need, why not help the police with crime, right?
Right. And I guess he's been pressuring the mayor because they're losing more police than they're hiring, at least until recently.
And he's worried about that?
He's worried that there's not enough people on the ground enforcing the law. And like, there's two angles to take on this. There's the one, which is, this is an asshole who lives in Hawaii, owns a $1 billion company that's based in San Francisco, has recently made, I guess, an $8 billion investment in infrastructure in San Francisco. And he's worried about, like, this is what being a bourgeois person is you're worried about your investment, right? Yeah. So control and security are the most important to him. That's one angle, but I think the more compelling one probably is these guys are all sucking up to Trump. Yeah.
Because, like, it's not great. There's a PR angle here that's just really bad. I don't think it's a popular angle to have billionaire CEOs calling for, armed forces to enter American cities,
especially when they're not legally allowed to do anything about crime.
But and I don't think it matters to Mark Benioff to appeal to like the Trump base, although some of his investors probably like it. But I think it's a suck up to Trump because all these guys know how Trump works and they want a seat at the table, and they're all in this like mutually beneficial speculative AI game where everyone needs all of that to seem like it's much better than it is.
I think it has directly to do with AI. Actually, there's this general theme of these tech guys all flocking over to Trump, and you have to wonder what exactly that's about. Like they have different interests as Wall Street, who tend to prefer the Democrats in the last few cycles. I'm not sure exactly what that's about, but when it comes to the AI, anyone who's hugely invested in AI knows that this bubble is about to, I'm getting constant news now that this AI bubble is about to burst.
Yeah.
And unlike Obama, who was unwilling to discipline these guys when they needed the federal government to bail them out, Trump, I think they know exactly what Trump is going to do.
Favorites.
He'll pay favorites.
Yeah.
If you, and he's doing that with lawfare now. I just saw he indicted Bolton so the other day. So anyone he doesn't like or didn't support him is say you're up Schitt's Creek.
Right.
And everyone who he likes and sucked up to him, he's going to bail them out. So if the Salesforce is heavily invested in AI, then that thing goes bad.
Yeah, it's an insurance policy.
Yeah, that's more important than public perception of the company.
Yeah, I also think the Silicon Valley people have a a real, well, I mean, this is silly because compared to Wall Street, it's not necessarily hold up, but they want a level of just deregulation of these technologies that someone like Trump is more likely to give them than supposedly the Democrats. However, I think you're right. I think it has more to do with cozying up.
Yeah. Generally speaking, I think these guys do see themselves as like a sort of neo-tech oligarchy that does not need a democracy to thrive, that they'll be perfectly fine.
I think they might think they're gods.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think they want to live forever. I think they believe that they can pull that off if they have enough science. And we talked about this last time, but like some of them, I think Thiel in particular, but a lot of them are worried about the level of inequality is going to lead to social unrest, and that will be the biggest threat to their ability to live forever, which is...
Yeah.
Right.
He like semi-apologized or walked it back.
Yeah, he walked it back. He praised the mayor. Yeah, he said that things are on the right track, and he just wants, anyone who can help, why not?
When they have Dreamforce in San Francisco, like it literally like takes over the city. It's extremely taxing to the infrastructure of San Francisco because of the number of people that go to Dreamforce.
Yeah, he said, I mean, that's one of the things he admitted was they pay for hundreds of security people when they do that, so he probably was hoping he doesn't have to pay them.
He's significantly increasing the he should pay for security people if he wants private security for his massive conference.
People do come to me and they'll say all the time, hey, I want to be happier. I don't understand. You seem very happy and you're doing all of these things. How are you doing it? And I'll say to people the same thing, and maybe it'll help you, which is I'll say, tell me, what are 10 things that make you very happy? Let's make a list. Now let's make a list of 10 things that make you not so happy. Now let's look at these two lists. What makes you happy? What makes you unhappy? How about doing a little bit more of what makes you happy and a little bit less of what makes you unhappy?
Last but not least, at the end of last week, Trump threatened to slap 100% tariff on China.
Yeah.
The stock market took a dump. He since walked it back some. I think he's trying to figure out how far he can push things. I think he understands now that if he's actually limited by the stock market, he can't do whatever he wants and have the stock market react too strongly. So he walked it back. But he's doing that because China is sharply curbing its rare earth mineral exports. They have basically cornered if the United States is the oil empire, China is quickly becoming the rare earth mineral empire. And they've sort of eaten the United States' lunch in Africa and other places. And you're not going to have semiconductors, you're not going to have cell phones, you're not going to have tablets, you're not going to have batteries, you're not going to have EVs without these things. So they're like, look, you want to do a trade war, this is how we're going to fight back. So he was trying to retaliate, and he couldn't really, which is interesting. He had to walk it back.
Well, how much did he walk it back, though?
At this point, I don't think there's any plans to actually put in a 100% tariff.
Oh, the tariff thing it's like impossibly difficult to follow because it says one thing and then something else happens and it changes again. It does make for a jumpy stock market.
Yep.
Is it going to impact the price of toys for Christmas?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, it is.
Absolutely. I mean, get something hand woven from Etsy, I guess.
Everything from Etsy is also
from China.
I
know.
Etsy's been ruined for years now.
All right, that's all I got. Did I miss any news?
I'm sure you did. But I can't think of anything offhand.
All right.
We don't have to cover all the news.
All right.
Don't be sad, don't you cry, just let go of your pain. And when you fall asleep, not tomorrow's a new day. Don't be sad, don't you cry, just let go of your pain.
All right, so you have the artifact this week.
I do. I have a reel from Therapy Jeff, who you might be familiar with from TikTok and Instagram. He is a pop psychologist content creator that I think probably is mostly being consumed by millennials. And this content or this reel is about what to do to keep your sons from being radicalized online.
And we have several of them, so
Yeah.
this is important to us.
So I think I've actually watched the reel a bunch of times because before I thought it could be an artifact because I was like, what should I do? But but he has 5 things to do, and I thought we could just go through them one by one.
Okay.
Parents of white boys don't want your kid radicalized online? Do these 5 things. 1. Interrupt the victim story. At some point, your son may say he feels attacked for just being white or male. Don't roll your eyes, but also don't coddle him either. Extremist groups that are just a podcast away groom boys by selling them the lie that they're the real victims of feminism or diversity. That victim story is one of the earliest hooks, turning isolation into blame that's easy to weaponize. The best prevention is early conversation, teaching the difference between discomfort and oppression, and offering healthier narratives about belonging and fairness.
So this is the one I struggled with the most, but I was reading a Canadian report or a Canadian organization's take on radicalization of white boys. And it actually pointed out that there's kind of a pipeline. There's a approach to this, which is that you've got kids consuming and sharing like stupid memes online that are anti-Semitic or racist or insensitive.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't really know what they're consuming or sharing. And then they get themselves like slapped down for doing it. Like a teacher or a parent or a peer will be like, no, that's wrong. You're wrong.
Yeah.
And it triggers a lot of shame and humiliation. And also it doesn't really, it creates alienation for that kid. And with that in mind, I'm like, oh, I can see how that sparks this sort of victim narrative for boys where they're like, I don't get to say anything without some sensitive person telling me I'm wrong. And I feel very defensive when it happens. So I'm like lashing back out and it must be their fault. It must be feminists or woke people or fill in the blank's fault that I'm being censored and feeling this way. And therefore, like all my blah, 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 I'm justified in behaving that way. So that's sort of where I was going with it because I'm not sure that what like this one doesn't land with me that well.
Oh, it doesn't resonate. I mean, it resonates.
If my white kid said to me, oh, it's women's fault that I can't get into college, I would be dumbstruck by that comment and would not be happy with it. But it feels like that's not, I would be surprised if we had that kind of narrative coming from our kids.
Yeah, me too. I mean, there's this whole discourse in the activist left about call in versus call out.
Right.
And this is a good example, I think, of how woke scolding doesn't really have the impact that people hope it does. It becomes more about like staking out your claim about what's right and wrong and less about convincing the person.
Right.
And if you do that to young boys
or any kid, any young person.
Right. Well, it's what I want to say about this is it's particularly dangerous for young boys because a lot of the construction of what being a boy and then a man is like teachers, particularly female teachers, don't get to tell you what you're allowed to say and what you're allowed to think, right? Like I get to decide because I'm the boy/man. And I think if you believe the more manly you are, the more you can get away with like setting the tone or having the opinions that people listen to. And that's not being allowed to happen. It's sort of a threat to your identity, and then it sort of spirals from there. I think that's why I think it's that this is going to come up some in this conversation. But like my feeling is that in many ways, being a man is defined by having power over women. Like the definition of a man disappears in the absence of women, and the way that relationship is defined is I am the one who has power over them. I control the resources and they don't. And if you want to believe that gender is a social construction, which I do, I don't think there is any like pure definition of masculinity in the absence of like the woman there. It's that's required. So
yeah, well, so if you take that to its conclusion, something that starts to deconstruct gender roles like feminism or progressivism or women or other people's access to public life or resources, that is in fact threatening certain ideas about masculinity.
Oh yeah.
And
yeah.
therefore, if you're feeling threatened in your pursuit of that type of identity, it's easy, I guess, to be like, I am a victim of something.
Yeah, this applies more to like adults, but there's been this like generation long conversation now about what is a man now that men are not the primary breadwinners. And I think the answer is there really is no definition of what is. If you don't have a monopoly on being breadwinners as a social category, which is what men are, then what is the point of the social category? It's not like, I don't think it's clear.
A lot of the legacy of feminism in the United States, some of the most prominent features about it were sort of liberal second wave feminism, but mostly focused in getting certain women into the workplace. And so if that's the primary legacy of how people understand feminism, and not having access, no longer being the primary breadwinner is how you understand masculinity, then it's a pretty threatened identity.
Yeah.
I think the other part here is that that's just preyed upon online. And so I guess if you've got kids consuming content that like really propagandizes how hard it is to be a boy because of all the, I don't know, women, woke liberals, Black people that are taking things from you, then I guess that would make you feel, I guess you could have a pretty strong victim narrative.
Yeah, it's not even taking things from you. It's having access to things without having to go through you or ask your permission or get your blessing, right? That's the tough part. And I don't think people think this like actively on the top of their brain, but that's really what's going on is like, I used to be the one who got to decide who got these things. And now they're not even talking to me. They're just going and doing it.
Well, yeah. I mean, the 13-year-old boy never used to be the one. But
that's what that is the construction. That is what being a man in the Western tradition is. That's the tradition that they're inheriting, and they, that's operating under the.
I learned this term today, which is digital masculinity, and that is a concept. I guess digital masculinity is a defined concept that social researchers have used probably to code the type of interactions people are having online. But that is basically digital content that promotes this sort of traditional idea of masculinity being about power, control, access to resources, access to women, access to sex. So if that's the content being consumed,
it appeals to boys, even boys who have never lived in the time where that was normal, because that's, there's an absence of a definition of masculinity that they can have instead. So they're trying to figure out how to be a boy and be a man instead of being a girl. And this is the only answer they're really getting. So, All right, let's do the next part.
2, teach emotional literacy. If your son can't name or regulate his feelings, he's way more likely to turn rejection into rage. Teach him how to say, I feel lonely, instead of girls are the problem. Feelings don't disappear just because you ignore them. They leak out as blame and turn into resentment and contempt, and then far worse.
I found it to be a real bummer as an adult that feelings don't go away by just ignoring them. And of course, all of the content I get to consume on my Instagram as a millennial mother of children is make sure you're teaching them emotional regulation skills. It's all this. So this one is like, this is the ocean I swim in as a parent,
as a millennial Instagram mom.
So it's kind of like, yeah, duh. We gotta do the social emotional learning.
Yeah, I think I've obviously heard this discourse a lot, but it's interesting to tie it directly to not getting mad at girls as sort of like the inability to identify and manage your own emotions will leak out into like the sort of incel mindset. I hadn't seen that connection before.
We see we see with our kids all the time, and it's what we work on. They have a big feeling, and they have to blame the feeling on somebody else because the feeling feels too big and scary to have themselves. And so that's the major work with several of our children is naming and space for a feeling that doesn't then spill out into other people or justify bad behaviors.
Yeah, and this is another area where like the construction of masculinity is a additional problem because it's harder as a boy to admit fault. It's harder as a boy to be like, I feel this way because I did something wrong. It must be someone else that
I think
did
it's
it.
harder as a boy.
I must be right.
Yeah. Well, I think there's definitely a whole part where the boy-men part of society has been let off the hook for emotional management because they outsource it to the females in their lives. So, it means that the fathers, the grandfathers, and the boys potentially have lower skill sets and lower expectations for emotional management, which means they're less likely to be emotionally literate, and they're also much less likely to feel empowered or even responsible for their own emotional management.
Yep.
Which is, as someone who struggles with the feelings, it's not a great place. It's not a great way to live. So it's like, that's really disempowering, and it tends to create a lot of burden on other people.
Sure. And you can imagine, like, you close your eyes, you imagine, like, what does a man do? A man gets home, they're in a bad mood, and the man, not the weak guy who's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm in a bad mood, but the man, everyone tiptoes around, and they, that's the model that they've been given.
Well, right. And the alternative, or at least the model that certainly was passed down in my family from generation to generation, is that the mother, the female figure, is responsible for the tone and emotional tenor of the house. So if it's a bad tone or emotional tenor, it's because you have not taken care of it properly.
The woman has not done a good job taking care of the man's emotions.
Through the emotional center of the entire operation, which in some ways is a lot of power and control. And it gives you perhaps more empowered skills, but also is insane.
Well, it's not control. It's just the responsibility without the control.
Right. My life. My life struggle. I was also going to say that hopefully this is less and less true, but it's also the thing about masculinity that hopefully becomes less and less true with our kids, but still exists, is that even admitting a feeling is more challenging and less common for kids.
Because you're not allowed to have any, except for anger.
Yeah.
That's the only one you're allowed to have.
So how are you supposed to say, I'm sad, I'm lonely, even do the first step of these things if you're a boy? And, I think we're lucky we were raising our kids in a particular community where we're getting a little bit more leeway there. But
yeah. I mean, identifying loneliness as a feeling, which is he does, is interesting.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't normally think of that as a feeling. I guess feeling lonely, people feel lonely, but loneliness is like a state of being of like disconnection and alienation. And does seem that like there is this problem, which is like not getting female attention as a boy and later as a man is devastating for men. And the solution has been like online. The solution is, why don't you hang out with the guys in your life? Like, why go to a gaming convention, go watch a movie, go play football?
Is that the solution? That seems pretty healthy.
It seems pretty healthy, right? There's no reason to be lonely. There's all kinds of guys out there. But I think underneath that is something more insidious, which is that men, and I'm talking about like men versus like weak guys, which are feminine. So masculine men,
real men
attract female attention. They command female attention. It's a sign of success and a sign of manliness. And so like having to default to like platonic relationships with other men is a sign of like, you're a nerd or there's something wrong with you. Like you should be,
that gets into another constraint of masculinity, especially, and a constraint of our current capitalist society, is that it is not normalized or considered positive to have affectionate man-to-man or boy-to-boy friendships and relationships that are deep and interesting and emotionally online.
Mm-hmm.
It is considered a weakness, or if you have them, it's supposed to just be like bros hanging out and there's no depths to those types of relationships. So it's yet another way where it's like, oh, if you're defaulting to getting companionship or friendship, either from any type of friendship, including with women, but especially like with other men, there's something that also is not cool.
Right. Yeah. And the male to male relationships lack the kind of intimacy that actually makes people feel good about them. Like there's a lot of teasing or competitiveness in those relationships. So then you look to a woman to like nurture you
to get that intimacy. Right.
Yeah.
And to name drop the dumb dad pods.
Okay.
Dumb Dad podcast, anyways, two men who are having a lovely friendship. But besides that, one of them was talking about how they're really excited to read the Lord of the Rings trilogy with their kids.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things they really liked about it is a model of close, intimate, vulnerable, emotional male friendship.
Yeah.
And those models are few and far between, right?
Actually, I was just thinking this, the term that's used for two men who are like a platonically intimate is
Platonic.
Platonic intimacy is bromance, which is like it's gayifying it. It's like you can't be masculine if you're doing that.
Yeah.
I will say that
I hope this is better with different.
Our boy children seem to be like so far, and they're young, but so far they seem to be a lot more capable of.
Well, that's what I'm.
Boy.
I don't know how much of this is our millennial baggage, and that like these things are different. Like what's nerdy and what's cool maybe is different now. Friendships with other boys hopefully is different now. I mean,
Zoomers are not showing that this is much better. I need to tell you.
3, model healthy masculinity. If all he hears is man up and don't cry, he's going to find belonging in toxic online spaces that reward cruelty, because if you won't let him be vulnerable, he'll settle for being violent. Show him that strength includes kindness, sensitivity, and respect, or Reddit will happily show him the opposite.
Reddit, dun dun dun.
So this is what you were talking about a little bit earlier, which is like, okay, if the versions of masculinity that have been traditionally shown to people that are structurally apparent in like patriarchy or that are like toxic online, if those models are really obvious to boys, you have to show them an alternative. So what do you show them?
So this is like, I don't think there is an answer to this. And I've worked in like the positive masculinity space as a social worker and nonprofit worker, and I've had the opportunity to spend some time thinking about this, and I think the opposite of toxic masculinity is femininity. This to me seems like a sales pitch. We want boys and men to improve their behavior, their conduct, their ways of thinking of things, like justifiably. And we want to identify some of the problems, which are called toxic masculinity. Oh, it's not masculinity that's toxic. Toxic masculinity is toxic. There's positive masculinity. But then you start listing what is positive masculinity, and you're basically talking about femininity. And I think the more honest thing to tell your boys is, it is okay to be feminine. Not as okay to be positively masculine and then leave a giant gaping hole where that is. Just say, you can be feminine. It is okay for boys to be feminine.
Yeah, I don't agree with this.
Okay.
Take.
All right, let's hear it.
So I do also think it's kind of a sales pitch. I think that people are like, you should model positive masculinity. And what they're really saying is, make sure you show positive traits to boys, men doing those positive traits to boys. And they want to call it positive masculinity. I also think that it's kind of a BS brand thing to be like, do positive masculinity versus toxic masculinity.
Uh-huh.
But I think that the opposite of masculinity, or the thing that we want to model to boy children, is not femininity. It's that category is just as unhelpful and just as constructed as masculinity.
Okay.
So in my mind, it's not like, oh, crying is feminine. Crying when something is sad is good for your brain and body. You should do it. And the way to communicate that to a boy is say, it's okay to be feminine. It's okay to cry. Or, we want you to be empathetic. That's a feminine trait. It's okay to be feminine, even though you're a boy.
Okay.
I think that is not the message. I think the message is, what are the positive traits that have been coded feminine and have been coded masculine over the millennia?
And do all of them.
And what are they? And what do they look like? And model both man adults, have men or people who present as men or do those things in the kid's life, and have women do them and talk about them, and not call them, and really abandon calling them either feminine or masculine.
Yeah, I guess I agree with that. I think, what you don't want to do is like reinforce a construction of like divine femininity or something like that, which I think is...
I also don't think it's true that all the positive traits that we would list are in the feminine.
Okay. So what is a positive masculine trait?
I think that the couple that I can come up with
Okay.
are being brave and bold, confident, courageous, those types of traits. Those are not traits that are feminine.
Okay, I agree with that.
And I also think being a provider of sorts, whether that's the person who goes and kills the deer or the person that makes sure that your family has a roof over your head, is a positive trait.
So like a material, not like a nurture, like the nurturing thing's feminine, but a material provider.
A type of caretaker, but yeah, a material caretaker.
Okay.
I also think like strength is potentially it's definitely masculine coded and is a positive trait. I don't know that so a lot of these traits become a little bit tricky because it's like, well, what if you're not strong? Are you not good?
Yeah, if are you not able to provide? Are you then not good? Yeah.
But I feel like as a parent, you can figure out how to work with that. Like, there's many different types of strengths
and many different ways to take care of the people around you.
And if you can't materially provide, it doesn't make you a bad person, but it does give you a way to start talking to your boys about what are the constraints to materially providing in this society. And those are really important for your boys to understand.
One last thing I want to say about this before we move on is I agree with what he says here about the positive masculinity, but I think that the most...
Wait, what do you agree with? You agree boy children should see...
models of men... being like flexible in their masculinity, showing... Well, he's terming it as positive masculinity, which is like, don't do the boys can't cry stuff. Like, be fully expressive, be a full human. Don't limit yourself. And I think my point is, I agree with all that, but I think that the worst thing about masculinity, and this is something that's been pointed out by feminists a million times, like women are oppressed, but they also have a lot more of a range of things they can do and still be a woman. The hardest thing about being a man is the acceptable range of behavior is extremely narrow. And instead of trying to create a similarly narrow set of things that we can call positive masculinity, I think the most important thing for boys to hear is that you can actually be a man in all kinds of different ways. And like your main goal in life is not to like, you step slightly off the path and you no longer get to wear your man card. Like that is not a way to walk through life. I think that's the important thing here.
Yeah. I mean, I think the way I would talk about this with my kids is to probably abandon the masculinity and femininity categories entirely, because I think you can identify as a man, a boy, a man, a girl, a woman, or neither, and you should have a full range of expression and behavior.
Yeah,
assuming it's not harmful to your community.
Yeah,
and ideally, our kids will be exposed to enough diversity that they are actually just seeing that in real time. Versus us trying to parse like, hey boys, you can do this or this. Hey girls, you can do this and this. I think I just think it's the reason you can't put your finger on like what do they mean when they say positive masculinity is because it's not a helpful categorization. We're talking about what are positive human traits according to our values.
Like maybe
a
better framework would be like pro-social and anti-social behavior. Yeah. Okay, go ahead. Let's do the next part.
4, teach digital literacy. Stop pretending he's just gaming. He's also in Discord servers, YouTube rabbit holes, and TikTok feeds being told who to hate. Teach him what algorithms are and how propaganda works, or the internet will raise him for you.
I wish I could pretend he was gaming. But I know he's on YouTube.
I don't know if gaming would be better. I mean, the YouTube slop is pretty bad.
The YouTube slop is, I guess for me, it feels like such a waste of time. But anyway, yeah.
I mean, I think that, yes, I'm a big proponent of teaching digital literacy. It's a lot harder than it sounds because your kids, in my experience, are just like, we don't have a lot of rules about it. So there's a lot of consumption of digital content. And it happens much faster than like our conversations about it can happen. And that's perhaps the result of having like too many kids and too busy of a life.
Yeah.
So I feel a little bit like I don't practice what I preach on this one, but I think the major thing about digital literacy or any kind of media literacy that I fall back on is what you're really teaching is strong thinking skills and critical thinking skills. So it's about analyzing what's being put in front of you and like trying to find the meaning behind the meaning. And I do think that we model that for our kids.
Yeah.
I think it would we should probably be more explicit about how we apply it for them, because digital media consumption is really easy to do. It's really easy to stumble into some real deep, dark places.
Yeah.
And it's highly addictive.
Yeah.
We've seen the addictive stuff with our kids already.
Yeah. I mean, I do think I haven't seen anything that's really alarming that they've stumbled across yet. And there's like a couple of things. There's like, yes, the awareness of what the algorithm is and how it works and how it preys upon the way that your brain is designed intentionally. There's like the capacity for self-reflection. Am I having this thought for good reason, or am I having this thought or feeling for some other reason? Right. So introspection, ability to sort of stop and think and self-analyze. And some of it too is like the state of being a millennial is to understand that the algorithm is fucking with your brain to draw your attention in and not being able to resist it. And that this is where like the just information kind of falls short, is this Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, they work whether they're working on you or not. They're sophisticated enough at this point that they can appeal to your like dopamine addiction. And that, like, what do people say? I sat there doom scrolling all night. I couldn't stop. They know it's happening to them, and they still can't stop it.
Right. Well, right. We know it's happening, and we have a hard time stopping it. So imagine what's happening to a child's brain. Right. And I guess you could you could pull this apart a little bit, where there's like addiction, media addiction and dopamine addiction, and getting the hits and just being like, oh my God, I just watched 3.5 hours of YouTube and I wish I had that time back.
Mm-hmm.
Versus I'm consuming content on YouTube that's telling me that the world is flat. And even though I did just spend 3.5 hours doing it, I can take a step back and be like,
oh yeah,
the world is flat.
Yeah.
So I think there are two skill sets here, which is like managing your brain chemicals and then managing your actual thinking around content.
What the content is. Okay. Yeah, I guess we agree with that.
But I do think they work in concert.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's especially, and this is a rule we do have, which is like, you're not going to go online and talk to people. You're not going to be in chat rooms. Because I think when it becomes this like quasi-social experience where you're either truly exposed to other people or you feel like you're being exposed to real people, though it's more likely to be convincing you of things that aren't.
That's true. Yeah. And also like the people are the worst version of themselves online for a reason. Like the all the rewards are like, I've worked with kids who are really into Snapchat, and it's just like gamified relationships.
Yeah.
And that's not a normal, healthy, moderating type of relationship. So it's going to reward you for being the extreme version of yourself.
Yeah. There's a couple of things that happen there. The algorithm itself is already finding the most extreme things and serving that most often, because that's what gets the most engagement. So you're already getting sort of the most extremes being served up, and it's hijacking how your brain does like social learning. Because when you're talking to somebody, you're always looking for like, do they understand what I'm saying? Do they like me? You're looking in real life, you're looking for like eye contact or nodding or grimacing.
Yeah.
And online it's all gamified and to an extreme. So like that's why people like to get the likes, because it's like, oh yeah, this.
Right.
So
I actually get more. This one person I'm talking to, I'm invested in this relationship, right? So I'm going to moderate myself or like act a certain way to preserve this. If I'm fighting with a stranger online, I want those likes from everyone else, right? So I want to appeal to an audience and rouse like a support, rouse them to like not just read it but to like it.
Yeah.
And that the actual person I'm conversating with, even if it's a real person or a bot, is a secondary.
Yeah. It completely bastardizes how humans' social learning system works, because you're right. It's like a highly gamified performance where most of the people involved are kind of objects at that point.
Yeah.
So if that is how your child is having many social interactions or conversations about important things that relate to their identity or their future, they are likely to get way off the rails really quickly.
Jeez, I'm thinking about I've had these blame wars, And I'm like, you think you're winning if you're getting more likes than the other person, but it's 100% who the audience is. Like if you're in a place where people are more likely to agree with you, you're going to get more likes. And if you're in a place where people don't agree with you, you're not going to get likes. And it's completely has nothing to do with shit.
And it's made further. So yes, you get big dopamine hits, and you feel like things are going well when you get the likes. But what you'll really find is that the more you crank it up, no matter where you're having the conversation, the more likely you're going to get likes, because the more you crank it up, the more likely it's going to get served up to people because it's got more
Spice.
It's got more spice, and the more it's going to activate parts of people's brain that activate things like moral outrage, and moral outrage gets people going.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't mean that the conversation it doesn't mean that any of the content that's actually being discussed is more important, more right, more accurate. None of that has to be true to get that kind of thrill.
Just engagement.
And think of like teenage boys, think of teenage girls. Like they love edgy bullshit because their prefrontal cortex is fucked up and they want like attention and they want like the thrill of it.
Yeah.
So it's concerning. I think we should go off the grid.
All right. One more.
5. Build belonging that isn't online, please. Isolation is rocket fuel for radicalization. If your kid doesn't feel connected in the real world, he's going to go looking for belonging on Discord, YouTube, and anonymous forums full of rage. And those places will happily hand him an identity built on cruelty. So here's the bottom line. Get your sons off Discord. Don't give them weapons. Give them belonging. Sign them up for bands, D&D groups, improv classes, woodworking, archery, volunteering, whatever makes him feel connected and creative. Talk to him about the feelings he's feeling before some manosphere influencer does it for you. Because if you don't shape his world, the algorithm will, and you're not going to like the result.
So this is like, I guess this doesn't mean fully fall off the grid, but it does mean making sure you're building a full embodied world for them, especially as they become older and really care about social interaction.
Yeah.
Is really important.
Yeah. I mean, we talked a little bit about like in-person relationships are moderating, and like you're not going to sort of run off the deep end when you have like real people, who are like, dude, that doesn't sound right. Right. You're more likely to hear that with your real relationships at your woodworking class than you are in your Andrew Tate Discord server.
I think that the other thing about that is that I'm not sure how accountability really works in an online setting. I mean, I think this gets into like the calling out versus calling in versus calling out culture, and what internet culture is much more likely to be a calling out culture, a cancel culture. And I think that's because it gets more likes.
Yeah.
But also because accountability is a really difficult thing that requires a level of like vulnerability and trust and community and connection. And it's very hard to achieve in any sort of place that has an audience. It needs to be built with like true community and connection.
100% agree. Yeah.
Because otherwise the accountability, that just telling somebody, oh, that's wrong, you shouldn't do that, just becomes yet another thing to double down on, or another thing to activate shame. And then you're sort of not any farther along.
What do you make of his emphasis on creativity? That one surprised me.
That doesn't surprise me, only because a lot of the stuff I've seen about raising kids in this digital world is that make sure that you're emphasizing that they're not just sitting there consuming content, but that they are in fact they're activating parts of them that have new ideas, build things with their hands, create, like get creative versus just, it's kind of like a consumer versus non-consumer.
I see. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense.
Because one of the things about an attention economy is it's heavily on consumption.
Yeah,
consumption and really basic engagement.
Yeah,
which is not great for the human brain. The other thing that this reminds me of is some of the work that Jonathan Haidt has done, particularly about how the current generation has a lot of guardrails in real life. Like there's an overemphasis on safety and security and disempowering young people to be out in the world because they could, either because of how our environments are set up. It's not possible to walk down the street. It's not possible to, be out in your world. And also because there's more of a fear that you're going to get hurt out in the world.
Mm-hmm.
But there's very few guardrails about your online interactions. So there's a lack of safety and security. So those are like the free for all, and that's where a lot of kids are getting their interactions, and then they're getting very little in IRL. And that's sort of backwards, that there's just as much, if not greater, risk online, and that there's much more benefit than there is risk for kids, young kids, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds to be, walking down the street by themselves, independently doing things, getting hurt in the backyard, having like literally in their physical body experiences with other humans.
Yeah,
I can see face to face.
There's this trope about like, oh, when I was a kid, we would play out until my parents called you home. You'd be outside all day. Your parents wouldn't know where you were. Drinking from the hose and all that shit. But I've never heard a compelling explanation for why that went away. Like it.
So our generation's the beginning of it going away.
Yeah.
So when we were kids, it was like there's a lot of like, oh, stranger danger, someone's gonna literally abduct you.
Yeah, but why? Like moral panic.
Moral panic, sensationalization.
But why though? Like why all of a sudden did they want kids inside? Like that's that you're sure of the conspiratorial like social engineering of like wanting less of.
I think it's two things. I think it's one, fear sells. So it could have just been like culturally it was something to like get panicked about and write after school stories about and
stories about and
But I also think that being inside in your house really emphasizes individuality and consumption versus being outside in neighborhoods, in communities for young people de-emphasizes individualization and consumption. Like walking, making up games, playing on the streets is not a consumption behavior.
Right.
Like,
you're not going to get hit with like a microtransaction while you're doing that. Yeah.
Right. But sitting in your house and watching your cable and getting the commercial television and playing with your individual toys and getting your individual, video game system is much more complacency, consumption, and individualism.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think that there was like people in a boardroom deciding that, but I do think it like plays into like the way that American culture was going.
Mm-hmm.
And it completely misunderstands the risk.
Yeah, I mean the risk was going down while this happened.
Yes.
It was absolutely the opposite.
And whether or not it was purposeful or not, like young humans are their brains develop in collaboration with their physical body. So like there's a reason like. I don't not to get too woo-woo, but there's a reason that like lion cubs like physically play to learn as their brains develop. Like that kids need that too.
Yeah, which is why all of our kids are freaking out by trying to sit in a classroom because they spend like kids in our city spend like less than an hour outside a day. I think I read that was like 15 minutes on average a day during the winter, which is that's not enough time outside. It's
right. And
not good for your brain. You're not able to learn anything like that.
No, you can't learn anything like that. And just like physical touch is really low. I mean, our kids want to wrestle and they're very physical. And we could talk about that and gender some other podcast. But like part of it is just, I think, skin hunger. It's just like, I need touch. I need physicality. I need sensory input. And I have been cooped up for way too long. And then, of course, their own brains trick them because they're like, well, I guess I could watch YouTube for 3 hours. This feels good. And then they come out of that stupor and they're like, holy shit, none of my needs got met.
Yeah.
I just did this thing that I really wanted to do and I thought I could never stop. And I've come out of it and I'm hungry. I have to pee. I hate the world. No one's connected to me. I haven't touched anything.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's true of adults too, but
I
don't know. Raising this generation is tricky. So what's our takeaway?
Our takeaway, I mean, I think we should my takeaway is like to be a little bit more intentional and deliberate about this stuff and not just sort of hope for the best. I do think our values, we live our values very openly for the kids. And I think that is a protective factor against all this stuff. I think it's very unlikely, for instance, that our kids will see racist stuff online and be like, that makes sense. Because we've been very explicit talking about anti-racism and involving them in anti-racist stuff. They've been to protests and they've, had conversations with us about the history of racism and stuff. So that's going to help. But I don't think we should overestimate the threat and place about the other stuff.
I agree. I think I am less concerned about like political extremism and more concerned about like the loneliness, low self-esteem, they will have other traits of this sort of like,
Yeah.
traits that can lead to radicalization, but could also just be sucky traits anyways. You don't want to be lonely and alienated.
Yeah.
And
I mean, there's the left-wing douchebag, the white left-wing douchebag guy who, for all of the talk, is, you know, a sexist womanizer, hits people.
I can't have armchair activist, doesn't do jack shit, but has opinions about everything and acts poorly on top of it.
Yeah.
But also thinks he's always right.
Yeah.
Which is, to me, also a manifestation of like a fucked up masculine identity and too much time online.
Agreed. All right. So I understand you have a bonus artifact.
Oh, I do. So as I watched this as I watched this reel for the umpteenth time and was like, oh, we should just do this on the pod. I also was getting the news from J.D. Vance's response to the Young Republicans chat getting leaked. And so a bunch of, I guess, huge backlog of chats amongst Young Republicans across the entire country was leaked. And there was racist, vile, anti-Semitic shit in the chats.
Homophobic.
Despicable nonsense.
Yeah.
And J.D. Vance has an opinion on it.
Okay, let's hear it.
But the reality is that kids do stupid things, especially young boys. By focusing on what kids are saying in a group chat, grow up. I'm sorry, focus on the real issues. Don't focus on what kids say in group chats. But there's another angle to this that I just have to be honest about. I mean, I'm like an old guy at this point. I'm 41 years old. I have 3 kids. I grew up in a different world, right? Where not most of the stupid things that I did when I was a teenager and a young adult, they're not on the internet. Like, I'm going to tell my kids, especially my boys, don't put things on the internet. Like, be careful with what you post. If you put something in a group chat, assume that some scumbag is going to leak it in an effort to try to cause you harm or cause your family harm. But the reality is that kids do stupid things, especially young boys. They tell edgy, offensive jokes. Like, that's what kids do. And I really don't want us to grow up in a country where a kid telling a stupid joke, telling a very offensive stupid joke, is cause to ruin their lives. And at some point, we're all going to have to say, enough of this BS. We're not going to allow the worst moment in a 21-year-old's group chat to ruin a kid's life for the rest of time. That's just not okay. Like, we live in a digital world. This stuff is now etched in stone online. We're all going to have to say, you know what? No. We're not doing this. We're not canceling kids because they do something stupid in a group chat.
So, I mean, first of all, this is coming from the same administration that has deported people, not just canceled, but deported people for saying a stupid little joke about Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's honestly, he's full of shit.
He's full of shit. I mean, it's also like, if this was a Democrat group chat where they're saying this stuff, he's pouncing all over it.
Yes.
This makes his day.
Right.
There's the obvious hypocrisy angle, and I think that's absolutely valid. The other angle is that at first glance, this feels very like grace and forgiveness and understanding. And I think it's absolutely true that, like, young people do stupid things. It should be safe for young people to make mistakes.
And the digital world is definitely a different landscape, and it does feel less safe for young people to make mistakes.
Yeah. But then there's all these fallacies that he layers in there, and you're like, what? So, for example, who is saying to ruin someone's entire life because of a joke? Who has suggested that? Who has suggested... first of all, these people aren't cancelable because they're not no one knows who they are.
Not cancelable.
You can't be canceled.
Not kids. And just to be clear, they're 25 to 35-year-olds.
So they're not even children.
Right.
Like, let's say, okay, so stretching at a 25-year-old is a young adult, pretty young adult.
Their prefrontal cortex just got finished developing. So fine.
Yeah. So, okay. So is anyone suggesting we lock them in jail forever? No. Is anyone suggesting that they should be locked into minimum wage the rest of their life? No. I think it's a reasonable thing to say, if these people are representing your organization, particularly a political organization, at minimum there has to be some sort of reckoning or accountability. But probably is, go do something else. Cannot represent our agency, our political organization, and espouse beliefs like this. It's not a good fit.
It's like, you're right. He's masterfully saying something that seems semi-reasonable and almost correct. And then just you peel back the layers and you're like, oh, this is not only bullshit because you're not going to apply this evenly, but also just bullshit because everything you say is not quite right. For instance, is the problem that people have said things that are problematic, or is the problem that people have leaked the problematic things that have been said? Is the problem that boys can't say things, or is it the problem that boys are saying things that are hateful?
That should alarm us all as a society. And that's the thing he really cares about, I think. And this clip is trying to normalize. All of your kids are saying this stuff. I want you to know, my kids are saying it, your kids are saying it. It's perfectly normal and natural, and we should not overreact. And what that is to normalize a list of hateful things that this is a worldview where people feel this way and have not been allowed to express it because of wokeism. And if you get rid of the woke scolds and get rid of the cancelers
and the pearl clutching,
what you'll be left with is a world that's much more in line with his actual political ideology, which is that some people are inferior by birth. Women should have less rights. You should kidnap immigrants and
this brings us right back to number 1 from Therapy Jeff, which is you should be countering the victim narrative. And what JD Vance is doing here is saying quietly, but he's saying it, his boys, these young Republicans, they are the victim of something here.
Yeah, they're the real victim.
They're the victim.
Right. The normal thing was to say, I guess that they're praising Hitler in this troop chat. Then that's the normal thing. The victim thing is ask them for any accountability at all for that. And so the response to this is, and I would be curious what you have to say about this. I don't want to ruin their lives. Fine. I don't want to cancel them. I don't know if that's possible because they weren't famous, but fine. But I do think there should be some fucking accountability. And I think that raising 18-year-olds, 17-year-olds, 16-year-olds, much less 25-year-olds with what you say and what you do doesn't matter, you can't be held accountable. Does JD Vance believe in that world where nothing you say or do you should be held accountable for? I'm sure if pressed, he would say, no, we don't want our boys believing they could just say and do whatever they want.
Well, I don't know. If pressed, I mean, there's a lot of people, including our favorite newsroom boss lady, Barry Weiss, who wanted to excuse Kavanaugh's behavior because he was a boy.
Yeah, I mean, so this is like, again, this is where, this is something he did as a frat boy in his late teens, early 20s. Does that mean he has a lifetime ban from holding high elective office? I'm not sure. But are they saying it's fine? Go ahead and sexually abuse girls?
Well,
are they saying, let's see some accountability? Let's see, this is something I never should have done. This is how I'm going to publicly take accountability. This is how I'm going to do something to make sure it doesn't happen again.
Good point.
Right? That's what I want to see. That I think the reasonable position here is these people should not be representing your organization because they clearly have beliefs that you're pretending are in line with your political organization. Although that's not true. But I want to see you do something to do the harm.
Well, another reasonable response would be, yes, some very vitriolic and hateful things were said, and let me show you how the community responded to when those things were said.
Yeah.
But we haven't seen that. We haven't seen anyone be like, look at all the people that were like, you shouldn't say that Hitler shit, probably because everyone was like, thumbs up, dude.
Yeah. And this is it's not harmful to people just because it got leaked and vulnerable people had to read it. It's harmful to all the people in their group chat. You're spewing this shit on people, and and we've talked about this too before. It's when you just dehumanize other people, you're dehumanizing yourself too, because all human life is worth less.
Yes.
So they have done harm to themselves and other people, and there should be some reasonable, commiserate accountability asked of them. Well, we should do that for our kids. That's the lesson, guys. If our kids do this, there needs to be accountability. There is not, boys will be boys. That's the JD Vance says, boys are boys, white boys are white boys, is what he's saying. White boys are white boys, and this is who your white boys are. So don't jump over these white boys, because then someone's going to come after your white boys.
Exactly what he's saying. And that leads me to the other takeaway that we should be taking, that we should be saying, what does accountability look like for our white boys? And I want to do that accountability in a community of people. I don't want that to just be our nuclear family trying to enforce accountability on our kids. I want them to be connected to their peers, connected to their community, and for them to get some of that, to get that accountability beyond just from their know-it-all parents.
Yeah. I guarantee you, whatever age, 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old kid sits in front of their whole classroom and has to hear how people feel about something that they did, has to say, I hear the impact of what I did. This is how I feel about hearing all this stuff. This is my ways of making amends or my commitments to the future. I guarantee you they don't do that shit again.
Yeah.
Guarantee it.
You're describing a restorative justice circle.
Correct. Yeah.
And yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah. So JD Vance, let's see it. I want to see you facilitate a restorative justice
Amongst
circle.
the young Republicans.
Amongst these young Republicans.
I'm starting a change.org petition.
And you gotta televise it so we know what happens.
C-SPAN. Okay. All right. Well, I think that's a wrap.
All right. Have a good night.
Bye.
Your powers will fade as you grow old. You're on the make and you don't do regret. You're always out for what you can get. You think like a snake and you ooze like a snail. Let the trail go cold as you swallow your tail. With your low rent skills and your heart of flint, telling your tales that are unfit to print. You're all weasel words, backed up by the boots, obsessed like the rest, with a promise of loot. Your pies will fade as you grow old. 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 You demand of the sea, it obey your commands. You grab at the land with both of your hands. But candles will burn and time will reveal all that you've done and the money you steal. The suffering you're causing gives you no pause for thought. You got your claws in the dead summer's heart. Birds will return as the birds always do. When they come home to roost, they'll feast on you. Your pies will fade as you grow old. Your pies will fade as you grow old. Your pies will fade as you grow old. Your pies will fade as you grow old.
Did you have any opener you wanted to do?
Top 3 fruit.